What is up, guys? The Strong Boys 19 here, and welcome to the very special and dedication series of reviewing Slipknot releases in dedication of Joey Jordison. And for this review, I'm going to start things off right from the beginning, from the year of 1996, releasing the very first Slipknot demo to begin their discography and career, entitled Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat. Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat was released in Halloween of 1996, and this entire demo was self-recorded, self-released through the record label of Ismist Records, which was an independent record label from Nebraska, and this is where we get to hear Slipknot for the very first time of who they would become later on in the band's history. Now, I was originally going to be telling you a lot of the backstory and the very early information about the formation of Slipknot, but I thought it would be better to keep it more interesting if you want to look these informations up for yourself, because it's very interesting, and for the sake and preparation for the review of this demo, I might as well just jump right into the demo, though I will share a little bit of trivia. So this demo was self-released to 1,000 copies from the record label, and most of the copies of the demo, original pressing-wise, was given to the band, and as well as fans who had seen Slipknot for the launch party of the demo, and as well as some copies were given to separate radio stations. That is when the early attention of Slipknot decides to escalate. However, it is extremely rare to have an original copy of this demo, because there are only 1,000 made, and there's barely any more copies after that would be up for sale. And after the demo's release, and at the time of the self-titled album, there had been numerous occasions of people making unofficial bootlegs of the demo on CD, vinyl, and cassette. And the one that I've got in the collection is the fake version. And the very noticeable difference is that the disc on the original copy is black and green, and the very common fake version, as you see, is black and white. So for any Slipknot collector, I advise you, do not buy the vinyl copies and even the cassette copies of this demo, because they were all unofficial, as well as this. But the fake copy of the demo is very common, but in order to get an original copy of the demo, it's escalating very massively with a lot of money, and you may get a very slim chance of owning one. Now, this lineup of the demo was entirely different to what we know with the 9-piece lineup of Slipknot. This lineup during the recording of this demo consists of Anders Kolsefny on vocals and percussion, Sean Clown Crahan on percussion and backing vocals, Joey Jordison on the drums, Paul Gray on bass and backing vocals, Donnie Steele for the guitars, Josh Brainard for the guitars and backing vocals. And if you can look at the packaging of the demo's release, you will see a difference of seeing band members of Mick Thompson and Craig 133 Jones. And that is the drawing involving the drawing of Mick and Craig. However, truth be told, they were not involved during the recording, so they joined Slipknot after the recording. So music-wise, this was entirely a different sound. And as I said, this was the very early sound of the band. But there are very diverse occasions of hearing different genres. There are some incorporations on inspirations with funk to disco and a little bit of a soul feel to it, but the aggressive sound on this record is all intact with what the band wanted to make. The first track, Slipknot, opens on loud crashing cymbals and drums and droning drop C guitar distortion chords, and hearing a lot of these machinery sounds all over before hearing the opening guitar notes to begin the song. And when you listen to this track, most of this structure would then be later on used for the song Sick, for the self-titled album. And I think this track, at almost 7 minutes, despite the long introduction for the build-up, it's a very, very good opening track. It's very aggressive. A lot of the riffs can be really groove-orientated, and I think Anders' vocals on this track has a really different sound of vocal distortion, does have a bit of a shouty feel to it, and I do like it with Paul Gray's backing vocals while the driving sound continues. And then later on in the track there was just a brilliant guitar solo, which is really rare to hear a Slipknot guitar solo in the early days of the band. And with the breakdown section, which does make me think about the last pieces of the song Sick. But as a track, Slipknot is a brilliant opener to begin this demo. Then we go into the track of Gently, and this track version of the song opens very beautifully with the folky guitar acoustic introduction, and I really like how soft it really became. And to hear these early sounds of the song until we hear the more heavier version from the Iowa version, I think this early version of Gently is just as fantastic. It's just a big, awesome difference when you can compare it to this version and the Iowa version. And this really does take into a darker, moody, expressive feel, especially with the quieter vocal performances from Anders, and when the aggression and tempo changes and loudness of the volumes burst in, the groove was really coming back up into shape and these very huge sizes. It's just another phenomenal song, and this was just one of my favorite tracks from the mfkr Repeats days of Slipknot. Do Nothing Bitch Slap. This is the most diverse sounding track, and you can hear Paul's very slap bass style introduction, and then it goes from heaviness to some jazzy fusion kind of sounds, by which inspiration of the funky sound, it was actually, I think, Donnie Steele that was inspired by some of these jazzy, funky kind of styles. And by adding that type of sound in, combining with the aggression, it's really strange, but it does make me think of a Mr. Bungle song. I was not really into it at all at first, but the more I listen to it, it's not really one of the strongest tracks because it's so much of an all-over-the-place kind of sound. I think this track was just very good for what it is, but I do think and give the band a lot of credit for spreading in a lot of the versatility. Then we hear the track of Only One, which lyrics-wise and verse-wise, Anders goes into a very different aspect onto the staccato rapping kind of vocal performance with the accompaniment of some wah-wah guitars, and then that loud breakdown section on the chorus with some more of these grunty distorting guitar riffs. I do like this track version of Only One, but that's not up until the more distinctive version and aggressive sound of Only One from the self-titled album, which I always prefer than this. But I think this is a really good sound of Only One. Tattered and Torn, hearing these very creepy sounds with the clean guitars, and just like the drumming that Joey did on the first album, his drumming on here is very much alike. Different lyricisms this time around, but it still brings in some more of eerie and creepy vibe and atmosphere to it. Tattered and Torn was just one of those darkest sounding Slipknot songs that I've ever heard, than just hearing these simplified, effective nu metal aspects of these heavy riffs. But I do enjoy this version of Tattered and Torn, as it brings in some punch at the same time towards the end. Now this track, Confessions, this is one of my very favourite tracks from this demo. You can hear the virtuoso playing of Paul's bass work. His bass work from the beginning is just amazing. You can hear the clean guitars all the way through, and this is where the funkiness of this song really begins, with some more of the cleaner vocal tone. And Anders as a clean vocalist is not really that bad on here, and hearing more of a really rough style. And as well as the production quality of this demo, it's very raw, and, you know, not many demos would be at a top-notch quality. Absolutely a brilliant track. I really like the differences of the tonality and how funky, as I said. Another great guitar solo. I do think that Confessions is one of the most underrated tracks on the demo. Some Feel, which is maybe my favorite track out of the whole listening experience on the demo. Some Feel does contain one of the heaviest grooves and the big dominating sound. I do like how destructive it kind of sounds as well, and I think that this track, from the way it sounds, just has a lot of balls and action to it. I do like the interaction between Anders' growls and Paul's shouting backing vocals, and with the diversity of the structure all around on this track, this is just one of the most intensifying songs on the whole demo, and I just always admired this. It's just one of my favourite tracks from the demo all the way through. Now we hear the track of Killers Are Quiet, which is the longest track on here, and you can immediately tell the sound of hearing these few opening notes on the bass and the rumbling percussion bassy sounds, to compare it to the track of Iowa. The second version of Iowa, though, is more disturbing and hateful, but this version of the track, though through a different title and different lyrics as well, I think this is where the moodiness, yet the heavy atmosphere, decides to take things further of what Slipknot's going to make for later tracks that build in a lot of the darkness. Killers Are Quiet, the 10-minute track, isn't really that much of a bigger dynamic sound, but I do enjoy it. Structure-wise, it's just pretty much the same as the track on Iowa, though we go into some 5 minutes of some industrial, noisy, clanging sounds that we hear later on, after the few minutes of silence from the main track. And these sounds we've heard before from the introduction to the demo from the track of Slipknot, and then some more silence, and we go into this really nonsensical jamming of Dogfish Rising, which personally is the main filler out of this whole demo. It's nothing really much of a special one to talk about here after the main track of Killers Are Quiet, but I personally think that by hearing Killers Are Quiet, it's a pretty decent closing track, but I really like it by itself, though I would say that some of the tracks previously, like Slipknot, To Gently, Confessions, Some Feel, and even the early track of Only One, those tracks were more onto the more connection feelings that I have when listening to this. Overall, a lot of the instrumentation just goes in numerous occasions, and I do think that the performances with the band were very, very good, and to hear this small, brief era of Slipknot, I think it is a very special mark. And as much as some Slipknot fans would be very dismissive and critical surrounding this. I think that this was just a very interesting product as a whole from start to finish. And at 51 minutes in length, I would definitely seek out listening to this. You can hear the demo in full on YouTube, but don't expect to have an original copy of the demo because it is extremely, very, very rare for any Slipknot collector like myself. In terms for a rating for the Maybe Kill Repeat demo by Slipknot, I am very confident to give this demo an 8 out of 10. Not one of the strongest of demos, but since that I've been a massive fan, a giant fan of Slipknot, I should say, that Maybe Kill Repeat is a demo that I would definitely recommend if you want to get into the very early sounds of Slipknot. A very underrated yet early pioneering era of the band, but I have admired to go into this very different and interesting information to seek in a lot of the differences than just thinking about the very common popular 9-piece lineup of the band as a whole, because it's just a adventurous way, and I know I say the word different a lot, but it really is. So for a lot of these various sounds of what we hear on the demo to where Slipknot would be going at it later on with a dominating sound of musicianship and music as a whole, Maybe Kill Repeat could be a release that some fans would not be fans of whatsoever, but I truly remark and respect the demo as something really, really good for what it is. And in the next album review, I am going to be doing a special collaborative album review of the self-titled album with EQP TV. So I will keep you guys posted for that on the community section for the channel, right until we will do that album review together. So I'm very excited for that, guys. That's all I would like to address for this very long review. Thank you guys for watching, and I will keep you guys and maggots posted for more of these Slipknot album reviews in the near future.